The news at 5:45 with Alistair Stewart.
Republican terrorist feud claims its fifth victim. Minister in satellite spy row steps down for arrest. 6 Britons held in massive drugs haul near Marbella. And Las Vegas will hold a memorial service for Liberace. Good evening. The feud in Northern Ireland between rival factions of the Irish National Liberation Army has claimed its fifth victim. A friend of the jailed terrorist Dominic McGlinchey, whose wife was murdered last weekend, was found shot dead today on the border with the Republic. The body of Anthony McCluskey, aged 32, was discovered bound and hooded near the village of Middletown, County Armagh. The INLA said they did it.
Security forces from both sides of the border sealed the area off, fearing booby-trap devices may have been planted. McCluskey's body had been left on a remote country lane, shrouded by trees. An army spotter plane overflew, taking surveillance pictures for bomb squad officers. The murder had all the hallmarks of a terrorist execution. It's understood he was blasted by a shotgun aimed at the head. A finger was also blown off. The body was found by the roadside, the hands and feet bound. A Fiat estate car was totally burnt out and parked nearby. McCluskey had been abducted from a house south of the border in Monaghan last night. The Irish National Liberation Army this afternoon admitted the killing, saying McCluskey was a traitor. Relatives who arrived at the murder scene refused to comment, but it's thought McCluskey had connections with a breakaway faction of the INLA, possibly the Irish People's Liberation Organisation. The shooting is the 4th feud murder within a fortnight. First of all, 2 INLA men were killed in Drogheda. Then, last weekend, Dominic McGlinchey's wife, Mary, was shot dead. The RUC believe the IPLO was responsible for these 3 killings. Now it's thought that today's shooting was an INLA retaliation. The faction feud is still far from over. Andrew Simmons, ITN, County Armagh.
The Attorney General, Sir Michael Havers, who's been at the centre of the Zircon spy satellite row, is to take a short break from work on medical advice. Sir Michael, who had heart surgery 17 months ago, has been told to take a thorough rest. Labour MPs have claimed he's been the government's fall guy over the special branch raids at the New Statesman magazine and the BBC.
Only last month, Sir Michael Havers set a record as the longest-serving Attorney General for 200 years. But his 8 years in the job have often prompted controversy. His prosecution of Foreign Office mole Sarah Tisdall, for example, and his unsuccessful prosecution of the Defence Ministry mole in the Belgrano affair, Clive Ponting. But Sir Michael's also acquired a reputation for integrity and independence. At the height of the Westland affair, he threatened to send police into 10 Downing Street unless there was an inquiry into the official leak of a minister's letter. And in the Peter Wright spy book case, Sir Michael forced Cabinet Secretary Sir Robert Armstrong to correct his evidence to an Australian court because the attorney was furious at being called a fall guy. It's a charge Sir Michael has deeply resented, especially in this latest Zircon affair, though colleagues say it's clearly caused him stress.
He's been under tremendous pressure as the government's senior law officer. He's done a splendid and faithful job for the government for the last 7 years, and I very much hope that after a short rest he'll be fully restored to health.
Tonight, Mr. Mates and his select committee went to the Ministry of Defence to view the banned BBC programme. They're also getting a classified briefing on the spy satellite project, though even that's unlikely to answer the political questions the Zircon affair has raised. Kevin Dunn, ITN, Westminster.
Talks to settle the 11-day telecom strike are to continue tonight, and union leaders hope to put a compromise deal to a vote at the weekend. But telecom bosses have warned they still want pay rises tied to increased efficiency.
At their London headquarters today, telecom union leaders were preparing to ballot their members this Sunday. The union's pay committee said there was still a lot of hard bargaining to do on the detail, but the framework of an agreement was now in place.
We've got an understanding around which a settlement can be negotiated.
I think that we could reach a settlement, but it does depend on the union negotiators really negotiating, I would call it realistically, about the conditions that we must have.
Those conditions are at the heart of the dispute. It appears the union is prepared to accept some productivity measures. BT insists they must include flexible working so that one engineer can carry out a range of tasks. In return, BT's offering to reshape the pay deal. Though the two sides disagree on how much the dispute has disrupted the phone service, both are anxious for a settlement. But British Telecom's insistence on the productivity measures will be a hard pill for the union to swallow. Mark Webster, ITN, British Telecom.
A train carrying a 50-ton nuclear flask was partly derailed close to the centre of Gloucester today. It happened in a shunting yard less than half a mile from Gloucester railway station. The flask, which contained spent nuclear fuel rods, was on its way from the Oldbury power station to Sellafield. British Rail and the Central Electricity Generating Board said the flask was undamaged and there's no danger. The wagon has now been put back on the rails to continue its journey. 6 Britons, one of them a woman, are tonight being held in a Spanish jail accused of drug smuggling. They were arrested after police seized half a ton of cannabis at the resort of Puerto Banús near Marbella. It followed an operation by Spanish detectives lasting several months.
It was a raid on Marbella's millionaire marina that broke up one of Europe's biggest smuggling teams and put 6 Britons in prison. Spanish drugs officers raided simultaneously a villa and an apartment and also seized 3 boats in the marina. One of the boats is a yacht called Diogenes. It was previously owned by Manchester businessman Kevin Taylor, a friend of Deputy Police Chief John Stalker. Mr. Stalker at one time spent a holiday on the boat. It's understood the yacht was sold by Mr. Taylor last year to Mr. John Allen Brooks, who's one of the 6 now under arrest. A number of cars were also seized. Police believe that they were used to transport the cannabis from the south of Spain to various European capitals, including London. Using the cross-channel ports and mixing with tourist traffic, the smugglers' chances of detection were remote. Today, the police revealed the full extent of their haul. Half a ton of Moroccan cannabis worth nearly £3 million at street level. There was at least 1 gun and a clutch of sophisticated radios, both for communicating and for eavesdropping on police networks. Also uncovered numerous false number plates, capable of disguising the registered nationality of several vehicles. Although British police were not involved in this operation, Scotland Yard have promised full intelligence backup to the Spanish authorities. Details from their 6 British passports have already been passed on to London.
Here, customs officers are training up extra sniffer dogs because they're so good at smelling out drug smugglers. It's part of a £17 million boost for the customs service. And a report on Thames TV's This Week programme, to be shown at 9:30 tonight, highlights how dogs are being used to try and stamp out drug abuse in Britain's jails.
For the first time, a television crew accompanied a sniffer dog squad on a raid into cells and other areas of a prison, in this case, B-Wing of Bedford Jail. Suspected dealers will already have been snatched from their cells before the dogs go in, the foot of a bed here yielding a stash of cannabis resin. Prisoners often hide drugs in kitchens in other areas where what's found can't be pinned on an individual.
There's a good boy there. What did he find?
17 separate finds are made this time. The trouble is, Bedford can only afford 2 such raids a year, and it's estimated only 1% of drugs kept inside the prison are ever found. The most likely way in for drugs is through visitors. Remand prisoners at Bedford can have daily visits and as much food brought in as they can eat. Warders have only a short time to search, and methods of bringing in drugs have become very ingenious. So much cannabis gets through, it's now replaced tobacco as the prisoners' currency.
And some news just in. It looks as though the year-long Wapping dispute is over. It's understood that the leaders of the biggest print union, Sogat 82, have voted to call off the dispute with Mr. Rupert Murdoch's News International. This will put new pressure on its other print union, the NGA, to end its action. An official statement from Sogat 82 is expected later tonight. The government is to spend more on fighting AIDS under plans for a boost to the health service. £7 million will go on caring for AIDS victims, most of it in London. There'll also be a 3rd centre for liver transplants. And the Health Department says it's appointing another 100 hospital consultants. Our political editor says the next stage of the government's AIDS campaign will be aimed at drug users, and there may be special leaflets giving advice to addicts. The government has been ordered to pay compensation of £3,200 to a young man who was suspended from school 6 years ago after refusing to be caned. John Townend of Rotherham, Yorkshire, was 16 at the time of the incident. The award was made today by the European Human Rights Commission, the first since it ruled in 1982 that caning in Britain broke the Human Rights Convention. Showbiz stars and adoring fans have been paying tribute to Liberace, Hollywood's king of glitz and glamour. The multimillionaire showman, who played to packed houses for nearly half a century, died last night in his Californian mansion. Frank Sinatra said Liberace was one of the finest human beings he'd ever known.
All day, fans and reporters had crowded outside Liberace's Palm Springs mansion, watching relatives and friends coming and going, waiting for news. It came late in the afternoon.
Liberace passed on this afternoon.
For nearly 50 years, Vladiu Valentino Liberace, an accomplished musician, filled theatres around the world with his own special brand of showmanship. His audiences loved him, and he loved his job. He was an old-style showman with a gentle touch.
You like this one? Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's not the
With an income of some $5 million a year for 30 years, his 6 homes were as lavish as his shows, filled with treasures enough for a museum. There were, of course, pianos everywhere, including this piano-shaped swimming pool with cement quays. His private life, though, rarely became public. In 1959, he successfully sued the London Daily Mirror after columnist Cassandra had claimed he was a homosexual. On his last TV appearance in December, he looked haggard and spoke of the importance of health.
And if you have that, you're a rich person.
When he died today in Palm Springs, a local newspaper story that he'd been suffering from AIDS was strongly denied. And the last word from his devoted fans.
I feel like a part of me is gone.
Heaven's going to have a great pianist.
And Liberace will be remembered with a memorial service in perhaps the most fitting place of all, the scene of so many of his triumphs, Las Vegas.
Liberace's British fans were devastated by news of his death. Jean Rosen has been a member of the British fan club since it was formed in 1956. Whenever Liberace came to Britain, she went to see him. Her West London home is a treasure trove of Liberace memorabilia, concert programs and signed photographs. She collects Liberace-style jewellery, has all his records, and is proud of her collection of grand piano music boxes. For her, Liberace's death was traumatic.
I was absolutely devastated. I just couldn't believe it. It was like that I'd lost a relation.
Now all Mrs. Rosen has left are her memories.
The Japanese are once again in the record books for having the fastest thing on 2 rails. It used to be the Japanese bullet train, then along came the French with Le Train Grande Vitesse, the TGV. So the Japanese hit back. Their new linear motor train runs on a magnetic force field and is actually based on a British idea. On this trial run along a 4-mile test track, the prototype reached a speed of 400 kilometres or 250 miles per hour. Fast enough to do London to Manchester in 45 minutes. The main news again, a friend of Dominic McGlinchey, the former INLA leader, has been murdered in Northern Ireland. Finally, the Royal Engineers have been showing off their secret invention from the Falklands. Nicknamed Red Fire, it's been specially designed to destroy leftover Argentinian landmines.
The sticky mud of the Medway marshes is a far cry from the shifting sands of the Falklands minefields, but the Royal Engineers have successfully used these ranges to develop a number of innovations in bomb disposal. This remote-controlled digger, for example, can excavate deeply impacted bombs while the operator sits 200 metres away in an armoured vehicle. The Royal Engineers are constantly updating their hardware as warfare and weapons develop, and today they showed off their newest remote control invention, Red Fire, now busy in the Falklands destroying plastic mines which have drifted in the sand outside the perimeter fences of the minefields. The propane burner melts the plastic, burning off the explosive before reaching the detonator. But Red Fire is only brought in once a mine has been spotted. The engineers must still train for the hazardous journey across unmarked minefields. Anne Lucas, ITN, Rochester.
Channel 4 News in an hour looks at the developments at Wapping and whether or not the dispute really is over. And from Scotland, a special report on general election prospects north of the border. That's at 7, but from all of us on the news at 5:45, a very good evening to you.